Welcome, everyone. Welcome aboard the citizenship. I say that because we're all deep in Admiralty jurisdiction. And so how many people here could tell me, we're going to start with the notion of transport tonight, because transport's a favourite one of mine. How many people can tell me what they think transport really means?
A means to get from A to B, maybe?
Good.
Well, mechanised transport, vehicles, etc.
Okay, vehicles.
Just a means to get around.
Okay. So transport, let's take it apart. Transport. Everything in this world is based on this Admiralty jurisdiction. It's all to do with the high seas, vessels, ports, and all of those laws are all basically laws and jurisdictions that come from England originally and are copyrighted, I believe, to the Bar Association or something like that in England. So once you move over the seas, it falls into Admiralty jurisdiction. So when you go into some of the courts and you see flags that have, like this trim on them, this gold trim, you're actually in an Admiralty court. So it becomes something like the high seas here. Now, transport is the transfer between two ports. So what are we transferring here? What are we transporting?
Well,
Usually,
goods and people.
Yeah, we're actually transporting people. The people themselves are the goods. They're the cargo. So the vehicle or the vessel actually becomes, the road actually becomes like the shipping lane. And so you actually transfer something from one port to another port, and it's regulated by the transport, Department of Transport, right? So where does this all leave us? Well, we have these things called vehicles that we're told are vehicles, are private automobiles. What they really are another type of vehicle or vessel to ship around the Strawman. So, we all have strawmans. Anyone here not know what the Strawman is?
I'm not that clear on
No.
what the
Okay.
mechanism
Well,
is.
the Strawman is probably the first place we should start. The Strawman is your front. He's the all capital letter fiction that the governments and corporations create. This is where the matrix comes in. Like, there's the natural world, and there's the machine world. And the machine world, the digital world, emulates the natural world. It's the hidden world, and it emulates it in three ways, and that's with electricity, water, and salt. They're the three basic constituents of all life, and the machine world emulates that. And so you have Admiralty jurisdiction, you have circuit courts, you have charges, you have discharges, and all of the other elements that make up this machine world are based on the natural world. And so it's this kind of duplicate, so that we don't actually see it or know that it's there. So your Strawman, this all capital letter fiction, is created when you're birthed. Okay, when you come down the birth canal, out of one vessel, you're basically docked. The cargo is unladen, and you're registered. The cargo is now in a new port, let's say. So you are registered with the government, and you get a number, and you're assigned an all capital letter version of yourself, the digital you. Okay, not the natural you. This is the digital you. And what the government does is it takes that digital you, and it creates an account. And that account is called the Strawman. And the government uses that account as it takes out a loan, and it becomes a record of your future earnings. So, throughout your life, your Strawman will be the transmitting utility through which all commerce takes place in your incarnated form on this planet. Okay. So every time that you move around or do anything, or go out in public, or go to a shopping centre, a centre of commerce, or any of those things, or drive or put into motion an automobile, or in this case a vessel or a vehicle, you're actually complying with, or you might have to go out and get a license and apply for a license, and all these things are regulated. But they are all public, and they are all a part of this system. They have nothing to do with the private realm, which is what you see outside. Parked outside is my private automobile. Okay. Now, the private automobile isn't registered to the government because it's mine. Now, if you notice on everyone's license plate, you'll see a number and you'll see a state, because it's licensed to a state within a government. So it's a particular allocation. Okay. Now, all of those vehicles that you see on the road are commercial, whether they tell you that or whether they're not, but they're all commercial. Because when you drive, that's a commercial activity. You actually put into motion a commercial vehicle for the purpose of transporting one cargo or one person. Or what you're actually transporting is that straw man. You're responsible for that straw man. So when you see an ambulance racing down the road to save somebody, they're not going to save you. They're actually going to make sure that that straw man is looked after, because that transmitting utility is the real money that the governments have. That's the collateral that they use. They don't have any money. There is no money. If you think there's any money, we're going to look at that right now, and we're going to show you that there actually is no money, and you're going to see that our labour is the thing that actually the government holds as its collateral. And so we become, if you travel overseas, for example, I'm going to go, would you be able to get my port pass? It's on the desk. Let's get the port pass. Now, how many of you have a port pass?
Passport.
Yeah. Okay. The passport. The port pass disguised as a passport. Mm-hmm. Okay. The port pass is your documentation which allows your straw person to go to another country as a foreign exchange. Okay? You become the self-loading baggage. When you go to a seaport or an airport and you board a commercial airline, okay, you take your straw man and you show your details, your credentials, and it's an exchange. Okay, there's a commodity and it's being exchanged with another country. So of course, there's all these regulations and things. Now, what I've done, just pass this around and have a look. And tell me if you notice anything at all different about my port pass. Now, while that's being passed around, I'm going to write down here something on this bit of this paper here. So this little piece of paper here is going to be money. This is going to become currency. And I'm going to write down here $1,000, and I'm going to pass that over there. There we go. And I'm going to write down on this piece of paper here $100, and I'm going to give that to you as well. Right. Now, I'm going to ask you to sign your name on this piece of paper. And what we're going to do here is we're going to break down. It's an interesting signature. Okay, now you hang on to that, and you give me back the $1,000 piece of paper. Right. What we're going to do here is we're going to create a little bit of a credit card facility here. Right. Let's say our friend over here, I'm going to be the credit card facility, the credit card provider. I could be GE, I could be any one of a number of corporations. This person believes that money is real. So he's going to come to me and ask me for $1,000 credit so that he can go out and perhaps purchase something else, which he doesn't actually realise has already been paid for. It's actually prepaid, because everything is prepaid by the labour of the people who create it. Right? Mm-hmm. We're not actually paid with anything of any value. And here's the point: there is no lawful money in circulation backed by anything of value. Okay? There's no lawful money in circulation backed by anything of value. It's all fiat. And so you never actually receive anything of value. You never get paid. And so if you never get paid, where's the taxable event? There isn't one. So, you're going to come to me and ask me for $1,000 of credit. So I'm going to offer you this credit card,
Thank you very much.
and I'd like to take from you your negotiable instrument. So could you please hand me your signature?
Oh, you don't want the $100?
No, not yet.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I'm going to take the only thing of value that any of us actually have, which is his signature. So I've got this piece of paper now with his value, his signature, which is the thing that creates all value. And I am going to take it and I'm going to on-sell that original document to another company. Right. So it's gone. The original debt instrument has gone. And they're going to give me back whatever. They might give me $800. Okay, but they just bought his so-called debt. Now, what did you get? You got 1,000 credits. Ones and zeros on some computer somewhere. Okay. It didn't come out of my pocket. I just punched in some numbers on the computer. Okay. I didn't actually go and get any gold and give you something like that of any value. I just punched in some numbers on the computer. So the debt's settled. I don't have any bank balance problem or anything like that. Okay, so my debt's gone. I don't actually hold the original debt instrument anymore, so I don't really have any right to ask you to repay me that 1,000 credits. But I'm going to. Okay, so could you give me back the 1,000 credits, please?
Wouldn't I get my signature back?
No, not at all. Do you ever get your signature back when you sign a contract or something?
Well, in some sense of being unobligated to pay any more interest or anything to do with that debt, yes.
Once the interest has been paid,
But without being ornery, you can have your...
Sure. So I'll take back the 1,000 credits that I gave him. Now, I'd also like a little bit extra for my time. So can I have the $100 that I've just written out there for you as well? Do you mind if I have that?
Do you really have to have it all?
Sure, yeah. I really need it all.
What if I tore it in half and only gave you 50 back?
I like money.
I like money, so I'll take it.
So I really shouldn't be cantankerous. I should just give it back to you.
Yeah, because that's what
It's
we
the
do.
right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. You should, because otherwise I'll have to send you like a.
Get bad credit. You'll never be able to.
You'll get like a bad credit rating if you don't give me that.
Problems.
So I'm going to hang on to that. Okay, now they've got your signature, and I've got this $1,000 back. What have you got?
Probably about 500 Pepsis.
Okay, and where are they now?
Mostly gone, I guess.
Yeah. So
They're sort of being distributed amongst friends and
Did,
children and stuff.
do you have anything now of any intrinsic value that represents the original amount?
Not in concrete value, but I've probably got a lot of goodwill from giving away lots of Pepsis to people.
Sure. Okay. So as you can see, what's actually happened here is that not only have I not had the right to ask for that money back, I've taken some more what you would call real money. I actually took $100 of his real money. Okay. And so what you see here is the fiat money system going on. Okay. So we don't actually receive anything of value. So when you get taxed, there's no taxable event because you haven't received anything of value. Even if you went out and bought a motor car, let's say you got paid, you got your paycheck, and you went out and bought a motor car. You say, well, I got a loan and I went out and bought a motor car. Now what happens? You go and try and sell that motor car now. How much are you going to get for it? Probably less than half of...
Way less, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the minute you drive out that car yard, if you drove it back in and tried to sell it to them, there'd be at least $2,000 off the price, at least.
Okay. More.
It'd be more because there's no intrinsic value, and also that vehicle is already prepaid for. Doesn't have any value. Okay, so what you see there is the basic thing of what happens every day. We hand around all these pieces of money, and it only takes the International Monetary Fund to say, okay, the value of that is nothing. And it's not backed by anything. So it's not backed by gold. So
Well, it's way more evident when you get a home loan. You just go on the internet banking and it just appears there from nowhere. Where did that money come from?
where does it
It's
come
exactly
from?
the same.
Yeah.
Doesn't all the money the banks have to be backed by gold in the Federal Reserve?
No, not at all. It's fractional banking, so they can lend up to was it 90% more? So for every dollar they can lend out 9.
They
So-
only have to keep 10%.
Yeah, they only have to keep 10%. That's the fractional banking. Yeah. So no, there's not enough gold in the world to support all of the debt that's in the world. So everyone is bankrupt. All of the governments are bankrupt, and it's all just a big game at the moment to see how bankrupt they can become before the house of cards falls down. Yeah, it's a very scary thing. And I actually think that 2008 will see the end of the US dollar, because they are so far in debt, so many trillions of dollars in debt, that they can never, ever, ever recover. So what they do is they take us, or moreover, they actually take our Strawman, and they own us. So they own us. And that's why they can do what the hell they want. That's why we are not allowed to complain. People always talk about rights. I've got the right to do this, I've got the right to do that. What are my constitution rights? That's bullshit. None of that exists. None of these rights actually exist, because we've given them up, and we gave them up when we agreed to be the Strawman. So how did we agree to be the Strawman? Now you'll notice on mine. Did anyone pick up
Yeah, all
the
rights
agent.
reserved.
Okay. I'm the agent
All right.
for the all capital letter fiction known as the Strawman. You'll notice this all capital letter version, not of my name, because if this was an all capitalization of my name, it'd still be my name. What this is it's an all capital letter legal fiction trademark that I own that happens to look like my name. Very important. And I am the agent for it. Now, it could say Pepsi Cola, it could say McDonald's, and I would be the agent for it. And I actually do own a trademark which looks like my name. And so it can be very confusing for some people. Now, I'm going to show you one other thing here. Here is my bank card. Now, pass that around and have a look and see what the name is on that. And don't read it out, because I'm Agent J tonight. But you'll notice the letters TM after it. Okay. Now, most of us, when we get a credit card or a bill or anything like that, we're asked to sign our name to it. So we do. Okay, so we sign our name on the back, and you'll notice on the back of that one, it actually says authorized agent or agent on the back of it. Okay, because I'm signing as the agent for the fiction. I'm not the fiction. Okay, I'm not Pepsi Cola. Okay, I'm not McDonald's. And neither are the people who own it. So I own the Strawman. Okay, and that's very, very important. And that's the thing that we all need to do, is we all need to become the agent for the Strawman rather than the Strawman itself, because then we take away the liability. We actually put a fictional entity between us as natural flesh and blood beings and the machine, because the machine only recognizes all capital letter legal fiction trademark corporations or corporate souls. We're all corporate souls. Now, does anyone here have a credit card or any other thing on them, any other identifying piece of corporate stuff? If you have, just lay them out on the floor there, and we're just going to have a look. I'm not going to read them. We're not going to mention anyone's names here. I just want you all to see exactly who you are. Whatever you've got, lay them all out there. Let's have a look at them.
Joey, you've been collecting, accumulating. Oh my.
Okay, so let's have a look here. We've got an all-cap fiction.
An MP3.
Okay. Now, what you've done here, every time that you've signed your name on one of these cards, you have done what's known in the legal world as enjoining. And you'll probably hear that in the courts a lot, enjoining. And by signing your name, You've agreed to be the all capital letter legal fiction. So you become responsible for it. You are now licensed. That's your license. So you have the capacity to drive a commercial vehicle and to transport other entities, because that's what you are. You're an entity. You all are entities, believe it or not. Okay. This is corporations law. If you get out the Corporations Act and have a good read of it, that's where all law comes from. It's all in there. Okay. All that stuff applies only to corporations. Now, I decided to challenge the taxation department. So I put together a very, very well-researched 20 questions and went along to the head of the taxation department. And he could only answer 3 of them. Okay. And basically, he hadn't read the Corporations Act, thought that it was irrelevant. And so I said to him, well, if I was to actually come along and sign up and become a business, what would be my, what would I become? And he said, well, you would become a sole trader. And there's a really interesting term, sole trader. And what that generally means, and he didn't know this, but in the Corporations Act, a sole trader is a member organisation of a securities exchange. That's the definition. Okay, stock exchange. A member organisation of a securities exchange. So when you become a sole trader, you actually sign up and you get an ABN number and you get a tax file number, and your all capital letter fiction will be registered, and if you sign your name to it, you enjoin and you become, and that's how you become liable for tax. That's how they get you, because corporations are liable to tax. Okay, you can't tax a natural flesh and blood being, because there's a hierarchy. For those who believe in a God or the universe or whatever all that there is, that all that there is creates us, and we create governments and we create legal fictions that create laws. There's a hierarchy system, and the way that this is structured is that one of those things can't step above the other one. We can't step up and tell the universe or God or whoever created all this stuff what to do. Same, a government or a fiction can't step up and tell a natural flesh and blood being what to do, but it can tell another entity. And so, in order to get us into control, into subversion, the governments must get us to become an all capital letter legal fiction. And that's what all of you are. So that's what I'm saying.
Does that happen at birth, or does that happen when you become...
It usually happens at birth.
With a birth certificate?
Yeah, because that birth certificate is what registers you and creates the account and allows them to take out a bond, and they register that bond that goes on the stock market. It might get pooled with a whole lot of other bonds.
So this process that you've gone through, can you start that when your child is born? Can you...
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you start off by saying they're not an entity and they're not going to have a birth certificate?
Well, one of the things we're going to look at tonight is argument, because argument is part of this system called honour and dishonour, and this whole kind of like weird legal system that operates under 4 basic premises, and the first one is called silence. Okay, and silence is dishonourable. Okay, that's dishonour. You have the right to remain silent. They're telling you that you have the right to remain silent. Now, perhaps as an entity you do, right? But there's an assumption there. Now, if you stay silent, silent is a dishonour. When you dishonour the court, what happens? They throw you in jail, or bad stuff happens, right? Number 2 is argument. Okay, argument is also dishonour. You can't argue with the policeman. You can't argue with the judge, right? Because it's dishonourable. That's where it splits. Number 3 is acceptance. I accept what I did. I take full responsibility for my actions. That's honourable, okay? But it can get you into trouble. Sure, because then you become liable for everything that you do. And in the legal world, you don't want to be liable for all of this fictitious stuff. So we have number 4, which is the It's the acceptance. It's the conditional acceptance. There it is. Conditional. Okay. So we have conditional acceptance. I accept what you're saying for value and consideration upon proof of claim. Bang. So let's say you're the judge. Okay. We go into this fictitious Alice in Wonderland court, and there's a charge. So here we are. We're in a circuit court, and there's a charge. Okay, because at the moment the court is dead. So get this right. The court is dead. It cannot move, and a court has to move in order to do anything, right? And so when you go into the court doesn't actually have any jurisdiction over you, and not many people realise that. Okay, they've been given a summons or a present. Okay, they've been given a presentment to come along and appear. But what happened? You went out to the mailbox, and there was a letter, and on the letter it looked like your name, but was it really your name? It was actually addressed to the all capital letter legal fiction, wasn't it? And so you opened that letter, and in opening the letter you accepted that you are the all capital letter legal fiction. You enjoined again, because it's illegal to open another person's mail, right? So you opened it up, and here's a summons, and it might have this all capital letter legal fiction that kind of looks like your name written on it, and you go, oh shit, looks like I've done something wrong and I'm going to have to go to court on this day. So you turn up at the court, and okay, you can be the judge today. What would be the first thing that the judge would say to me if I was sitting in the courtroom?
Could be a myriad of things, I'm not sure, because it would depend on the circumstances.
What would be the very first thing?
I've never been to a court.
And ask for your name.
Yeah.
State your name.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
Actually, probably the first thing they would
That's what
do.
I've seen on TV.
Yeah, the first thing they would probably do is to ask you to stand up. All rise. Okay. Please stand.
Mm-hmm.
And if you conform with that, you give up your rights instantly. You become subject to their jurisdiction of this fictitious court, because you've given away all of your natural common law rights just by doing what the judge said to do without any argument or anything like that. So the judge says, please stand, and everybody stands, okay, and that's it. He'll then ask you for your name, because that's the important thing, because what he's actually reading is the presentment. And so he's looking at the all capital letter legal fiction, and he's saying, Mr. Anderson, please state your name, and you say, Mr. Anderson. And that's it. He's got you, because you've then become the legal fiction again that's on his presentment. At that point, he can do whatever the hell he wants to you.
So by not standing and not saying anything, if one actually showed up at a court,
What would happen?
What are the implications of that?
If you didn't stand up, you would actually
and refuse to say anything.
Sure, that'd be number two. That'd be number two here. That would be argument, or it could be silence. If you sat there and did nothing, that'd be dishonour. Okay, you'd be in.
The implications of being dishonoured or in a dishonouring situation, could be quite
very bad.
Seemed guilty.
Yeah, this is not a position you want to be in. Okay, you don't want to be dishonouring. You don't want to be silence, because silence is tacit agreement. Okay, silence is agreement in law. It's an assumption, yes, but silence is agreement.
Mm.
So is there any other, I'm just trying to see what other, well, I've never been in this situation, so I don't know.
Sure.
I've only seen it on TV, but if
that's what
somebody did not stand up,
Yeah.
and when they were asked the question to identify themselves, if they spoke, not remain silent, spoke, but challenged the court system there and then,
Mm-hmm.
and could come up with enough arguments to sort of be meaningful,
Mm-hmm.
to challenge what the judge was saying, and because of an understanding of what you're actually trying to relay to us at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
looking at the bigger picture in that, and defending themselves, well, no doubt any sort of resistance from people would also be taken into account by laws or whatever.
Sure.
And the judge would have some sort of recourse of action. But I mean, what sort of situations could an individual resort to actually directly challenge exactly what you're saying?
All right. Well, I'll go into
not
that
fall
exactly.
into the trap of actually being part of the system.
No, because it is a
Yeah.
trap. Those two things, silence and silence and argument, okay, are the two tools that he will use to try and get your
I think
jurisdiction.
what I'm trying to say is, can you put where you've got to now in the discussion and everything is great. It's all in theory though.
Mhm.
Could you give us practical examples of how this is actually
Sure.
expressed?
Ask me my name.
Agent J, what's your name?
Your Honour, I shall give you my name upon proof of claim that you have established jurisdiction over the matter pending.
Good. Okay.
Or, I shall give you my name upon proof of claim that there is a controversy before the court.
Right. That would be really throwing it back in the face of the judge.
Sure,
Yes.
it's the hot potato thing. He's thrown the hot potato at you, and you just pass it on back to him. Because at that point he doesn't have jurisdiction, right?
And so what you just said then, what does it actually mean in layman's terms?
What that means is that I will do what he's asking me to do, because you have to do what the court asks you to do, because you're in Alice in Wonderland. Okay, so you have to do something. You can't be silent, and you can't argue. So you're left with conditional acceptance, which is your remedy. It's your private remedy, right? And so you do what he's asking you to do, or you give him something that he's asking, but on your terms. So, if you ask me to stand up, okay, please stand, I would say to the judge, I shall stand, Your Honour. However, I do not waive any common law rights, nor do I grant in personam jurisdiction. And then I stand up.
Right. Very good.
So I have done what he's asked me to do without doing without getting into trouble,
but
basically.
not unconditionally.
Yeah, there's always a
You've
condition.
responded to the judge, but you put your own condition.
Exactly, it's conditional acceptance.
Mm.
Now, the judge might say to me, he might be getting a little bit aggravated by now, he might not even understand, he probably does. But he might take his little piece of paper out and wave it up and say, what's all this about? Okay, now what would you do then? Do you say, okay, well, I don't know, it looks like, a piece of paper and there's some charges. Well, if you did that, you'd be answering his question, and he's got you. Okay, he's got jurisdiction, and then it's game over again. So, at every point turn in the road, there is an answer, and you only have to listen to what the judge is saying, because everything that the judge is saying is an offer. So you could say to the judge, I accept your offer to assume jurisdiction, Your Honour, upon proof of claim that you have established jurisdiction over the matter pending. Or, if he's asking you, what's this piece of paper about? There are a myriad of them. I could go into, a great many of these rebuttals.
So you could actually challenge the judge to verify that the judge is in a position to even be challenging you
Sure.
in a court of law.
Sure.
And play that game.
Yeah, I mean, he could say,
Does that not just delay inevitable results from this sort of interaction where you just end up really pissing off the judge?
well, you can't
Not
piss him
really.
off, really. I mean, he's trying to get jurisdiction over you, and if he doesn't get jurisdiction over you, that's it. The court case is over with. Now, what we're going to have a look at in a second is actually preempting that with paperwork, which is what I do. I don't go to court either. I preempt it with good paperwork. So when you get your presentment in the mail, I either send it back as incorrectly addressed mail fraud, return to sender, or if I decide to open it, perhaps as the agent for the all capital letter League of Fiction, I will actually write a letter and take it into the register of the court. Okay, with my 2 lines. I accept your negotiable instrument for value and consideration upon proof of claim. It's a 1 line. Okay, because at that moment in time, that presentment is nothing more than hearsay. It's all hearsay. Okay. A lawyer is an actor. A lawyer is a third-party intervener into a private agreement, usually, right? But they're a third party. They have no knowledge of what happened. And so they rely on hearsay, they rely on argument, they rely on controversy. And until there's controversy, a judge can't step in and adjudicate. So you have to stay out of controversy. Okay, you can't create an argument, because as soon as you create an argument, somebody can come in and adjudicate over that. Yeah.
Can we just do a little backtrack and just look at the common law?
Yeah.
Because that's like the basis of like our natural rights, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
That is the underlying, and there's also other corporate legality that's been layered on top.
Yeah. It's like a layered building, okay? And literally what happens, when you go up in that law structure away from common law, which is ground level common law, those are your inalienable rights that nobody can take away or change or do anything about. They're what they call your God-given natural rights. You were just born with those. You have the right to journey on the common ways of the land in your private automobile, uninterrupted, unrestricted, unmolested. Bang, that's it, over. No one has the right to come in and step in and say, pull over, I'm going to give you a fine, you were speeding, why weren't you wearing your seatbelt? Unless you're an entity, right? And if you're an entity, forget your rights. You don't have any, because you've got the rights that they've given you, which has nothing to do with common law. Okay, that's the next tier. So when you go into court, the court steps up. Okay, you've got the higher court. You've got the low court, you've got the high court, Supreme Court. Every time you go up and up and up, you get further and further away from common law, and they can't hear you anymore. Okay, so you can't bring common law into the Supreme Court. Where's my rights? I'm challenging. Where's the Constitution? And you'll hear judges say, he'll bang his little gavel down and say, if I hear any more about the Constitution in here, I'll hold you in contempt, because you can't bring the Constitution into this, upper echelon of law, because it doesn't exist. This is completely fictitious corporate law up here, and it is the furthest thing away from natural common law remedy that you can get. Okay, so we've all got to stay in our natural, I guess, our natural remedies down here. Okay, so we don't go to court. Well, I don't anyway. I don't go because my paperwork is good enough to preempt or basically challenge them, because they still don't have any jurisdiction. They don't have jurisdiction. They don't have proof of claim. Could you prove that I was here tonight? If I was to punch you right now, would you have proof? What would be the proof of claim that I was to punch you?
Just other people seeing it?
Sure, hearsay. Now, hearsay isn't admissible in court, but once you actually become, once you actually get into an argument or a controversy and you are subject to, the judge and his jurisdiction, it doesn't matter anymore. He will decide whether I punched you or not. If I didn't punch you and I went to jail, it would be a misjustice, right?
So
an injustice.
So just say, for instance, there was a policeman at the door, you punched me.
Yeah.
He just grabbed you, chucked you in the back of the paddy wagon,
Sure.
took you straight to the...
Yeah.
Obviously you would put these things into practice in law the next day or something when you're in court.
Sure. Well, he'd probably take me in and
the
lock me up.
policeman was a witness and he saw everything, you could still do what you were saying in court.
Yeah, well, for a witness to even be heard, there'd have to be a court case, and there wouldn't be a court case if there was no jurisdiction. Okay, so, again, when you went in, even if you went into the court, if the judge couldn't get jurisdiction over you, that would get thrown out. Yeah, because it's all hearsay.
And you've put this into practice?
Yeah.
On what?
A number of more than one occasion, and in more than one situation. Yeah. So I actually had to. They tried to get me to go to court for a long time for what they called traffic violations, and every time I challenged the police and challenged the courts, and every time I won, because there was no proof of claim. They were saying that I was speeding, and I remember when the pirate came up to me, when the pirate first tried to board my vessel, and said, you were speeding, and I asked him, I said, was I? Now, what would you say? You know, most of us go, "Oh, I'm sorry." Bang, we enter the argument, we enter the controversy. But I don't. I actually take away the presumption. Okay. Oh, was I? So it comes back to him to prove that I was. Well, look at my black box, and he shows me this thing, and I say to him, well, that's a nice box you've got there, because he's trying to get me to agree. He's trying to get me to enter that controversy, and so in the end, he starts to write out stuff. Well, give me your name, and I said to him, well, I'll give you my name upon proof of claim that there's controversy here. And he said, well, did you know that I can just take you and lock you up? And I said to him, yeah, well, that's called force, okay? Or a threat, okay? And that's what pirates do. And all of you have kind of like grown up in the era of electronica, so I mean, a lot of you would know Laurie Anderson. You know, in the 80s, she had a song called "Oh Superman," and there's a great line in that which says, "When justice is gone, there's always force," and that's true, because if I feared anything, which I try not to fear anything because fear is obviously an attractor for bad stuff. So if I feared anything, it would be force, because I fear ignorance. Because every time that I've sort of been in a situation where I've had to be approached by these law pirates, they don't understand what I do, because they're not taught that, and they're not taught it for a reason. Or if they are taught, they've forgotten it, or they're not allowed to know about it. But essentially, they have their set of rules because they're policing the person, the fiction, the corporation. Okay, they're doing their job, which is part of the matrix, and they're coming and trying to intrude upon my private journeying in peace, or my private affairs, which they have no jurisdiction or no place to be in. Okay, so that's the only thing that would scare me is force, because in all other senses it's illegal to do that, for them to do that. They have no right in my private automobile to pull me over, to stop me, to fine me, to do anything. I mean, if they said to me, you weren't wearing your seatbelt, I would say, well, you show me the injured party. There's a myriad of laws and things that we kind of...
So you have to have done something wrong for them to be able to pull you over?
In their law, yeah. So all laws refer to corporations.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you were drunk and you'd run someone down?
Well, if I'd run somebody down, I'd most likely run down an entity. And so I would be liable for the entity, unless I was the agent for my all caps, because you see, you can only bring a court case or a claim against an entity. It will never, ever, ever come against a natural flesh and blood person. All claims, all insurance, for example, all of those things. If it even came down to it, if we were in a courtroom and I had given up my rights and the judge said, okay, I'm going to order you to pay $1 million damage to this person for running them down or whatever the hell happened, and I could say to the judge, well, I shall pay, Your Honour, upon proof of claim that there is any lawful money in circulation backed by anything of value, because there is no money to pay with. Right? So we all come back to this fictitious land again. It's an interesting kind of system. So that's the basis of the Strawman, and who all of you are. I used to be too. What I had to do is I had to go through all of my cards, all of my accounts, my credit cards, threw those away, cancelled everything, threw away my license, realised I didn't need a driver's license because I don't drive anymore. I don't put into motion a commercial vehicle anymore. I simply journey. So I registered and had my own private plates for my automobile. And anything that I had to actually do business with or use my transmitting utility, my Strawman, say if I wanted to get an account with electricity or a telephone or something like that, right? You need a transmitting utility. And the same with the bank. You have a bank account. They're not going to give you a bank account in your natural flesh and blood name. Okay? So you need your transmitting utility. But you still have to be the agent for it. But I made sure that every time I did, I took away the Mr. because a legal fiction, is not gender-based. And I always made sure that the TM, the trademark, went on the end of it. And so I slowly, bit by bit, reassembled all of my cards. And when it came time to get a new port pass, I made sure that I put the all rights reserved, agent signature on there. And they weren't going to give that to me. It took me an hour of talking to convince these people that was my signature.
An hour. I'm surprised that it literally didn't take you years.
Yeah, well, I was in there for a couple of hours organising the passport, and when it came time for them to actually accept my signature, that's what took an hour. Where they say, sign here, and I signed, and that's when the trouble started.
And what were they saying to you?
You can't do that. You can't sign like that. Then they actually went out and researched my past passport from years ago and said, you didn't sign like that before. So I actually had to say to them, whose signature is it? It's my signature. I sign how I want. Who tells you or the government who you are? So they asked me for, in the end, they asked me for a proof that, I signed my name like that. And so I was able to pull out other documents or other things which I'd gotten beforehand, which are much easier to get, like your library card or something else. And I said, look, that's how I sign my name. I'm the authorised agent for the legal fiction that happens to look like my name. And so they gave it to me. A very, very unique situation to be in, especially now because Japan has started to bring in fingerprinting. And they're bringing in fingerprinting and America to completely enjoin you with the Strawman. Okay? Because when you go and, they take your photo, they put the fingerprints on there, it runs through the machine, and up comes the all capital letter Mr. blah, 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 blah. That's you.
So what happens in Australia when that comes in your case?
Well, I'm still the agent. So it can have, that's my photo, and that's my signature, but that's a piece of IP that I own.
Yeah, but will it still have your photo, your fingerprint, and that signature?
Sure, as the agent for.
So adding electronic fingerprint to one of these documents it's not an issue for you.
Not an issue for me because I'm still. This is a document that I'm signing as the agent for a legal fiction.
Okay. There's a separation there.
Yeah, so I create the separation. Yeah. A very, very important separation because the government can come along. I mean, the government owns your house. The government, whether you like it or not, they actually own a security interest in your home. If you've bought your home, perhaps they gave you a $7,000 grant, or they have like a first home buyer's grant. Or when your child is born, I know when ours was born, they gave us $3,000 because they wanted to buy a security interest in our child, in our child's Strawman. So I've done that for our child. As I've always signed as the agent for him. Okay, so that when he grows up, he will be his own agent. Okay, for his legal fiction, because you need the legal fiction in this commercial world to exist. Otherwise, you can't do business. You can't earn any money because they've created this whole weird fiat legal system, which is like this giant matrix.
It's like a big game that you have to have a piece.
Yeah.
To move around and play the game with.
Yeah, but you can, by having a transmitting utility, you can stay out of the liabilities. I mean, I've got a private agreement between myself and the transmitting utility, whereas it holds me harmless against all claims. So if any claim came against that all capital letter fiction, I'm completely okay. Yeah. That's the kind of position that I think everyone needs to get themselves into, because at the moment you're all
and how easy
vulnerable.
is it to get yourself into that position?
It takes time. Probably, I'd say it would take at least 3 months if you started it today. To go through and change all of your details on your bank accounts, your electricity bill, your phone bill.
And what about tax and stuff like that?
Tax is an interesting one. Tax, you can challenge tax and taxation. However, you'd be silly to do so. You know, there's a lot of people who challenge tax and never get anywhere. A lot of people who go to jail for not paying tax, right?
Everyone, one
All those
group
sorts
of
of
people
things.
that you really don't want to fight with.
Yeah, you don't want to kind of fight. You don't want to fight, and that's the whole point. There is no fighting. Bruce Lee said it once. He said when his master came up to him and said, "What's the first thing that you do when you come across an opponent?" And Bruce Lee said that there is no opponent. You know, that was a very true statement. I never understood it at the time, but I do now. Because if you create an opponent, then
You've got to fight them.
you've got to fight it. There's no fighting. So, is there any questions in regard to, now you all understand basically who the Strawman is, and we can probably move on to something else. Okay, what should we cover next?
Was that all just the straw man?
That was basically it was an introduction to the Strawman, who he is, how he got there, and basically how you guys interact with the corporations and the governments. Yeah.
So larger corporations or people that are very high up use this exact system to get...
Yeah, it's all set up to use the all caps. It's all set up. So when I went along to the library and the lady tried to subvert the system, I said, okay, I want you to put it in with the upper and lower case in my proper common English, common law English name. So she did that. But it still printed it out in all caps. All of them, in every situation. I've tried the banks, I've tried the, in every situation, it still comes out in all caps. And it's not an error, and it's not a machine fault. It has to be that way. Okay. Yeah. The United States of America Corporation, for example, is a corporation. It's not a country. Okay. Its jurisdiction is the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. Okay. It's a Masonic city on its own. And that's its jurisdiction. It has no jurisdiction over the rest of the continental United States of America. But the United States of America Corporation, in all caps, with its president, because every corporation needs a president, this one happened to be a Bush, has no jurisdiction over the continental United States and its in its citizens. But of course, we're all aboard that citizenship again. Yeah. So, okay. What should we talk about?
Very good, very good. Well, that's kind of a bit of an overview.
So let's talk about some more personal stuff, like how this might affect. Does anyone have any questions about how this stuff would affect each of us?
So have you come across anything in your life that's when you're in the situation just you can't do something, or it's just too difficult, or you pose problems?
Tax probably is the one that I've run up against. Now, I initially went the hard way and tried to fight against tax. Okay, I did an enormous amount of research and challenged the taxation department.
To try not to pay tax? Or?
No, to try to get the taxation department to prove that there was a liability between me and the taxation department. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't prove that there was a connection. And so not only did I write the 20 questions, that they only got 3 right, I then produced a document based on that, and I gave them the supporting evidence. And I faxed it all off and never heard from them.
Would you happen to know or have a copy of those 20 questions?
I do. I have all of those on my
Would
machine.
I be able to get a copy?
Sure.
Is there someone I'd like to put them to?
Sure. You're welcome. Yeah, I'll get Rodrigo to forward them. I've got them probably as a document file, so I can send them to you. Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, they're very interesting. But when I realised that there was no lawful money in circulation, it kind of discounted everything. It kind of made it all funny to me, because I realised there was no taxable event. Anyway, so bang, there's one sentence and the whole lot's gone. So all that research that I did was just bollocks. Yeah. So getting back to the credit card thing, just for a second here. A friend of mine was $47,000 in debt. I was $5,000 in debt before as well. So I'd known I followed the process and I got rid of my $5,000 debt. And a friend of mine said, "Can you do it for me?" And he had $47,000 in debt. 40,000 of it was a home loan to Bank SA, which is St George Bank, and 7,000 was to GE. Now, I'd already dealt with GE. I knew what goes on at GE, and so I knew how to handle them. It was a piece of cake, right? So it took all up, I think it was around 2 months to completely wipe his debt clean. And in the beginning he was very skeptical, and everyone, like his mother, was saying, don't do it, it's not going to work, it's not possible. Even my parents, would say that. And I had to explain all this stuff very carefully, and I said, look, I'm not going to do anything wrong at all. I'm not going to put you into any harm, and we're not going to do anything illegal. All we're going to do is ask some questions and see if we can get an answer. So I wrote for him a half-a-page letter asking basically 4 or 5 questions, and I can give you a copy of that letter. Actually, I should probably grab my laptop right now, and we'll just take a momentary break. I'll grab my laptop.
So have you read more and further into actually doing this?
Yeah, well, there's a huge amount of documents that relate to all different sectors on this.
Yeah.
Because basically Agent J has been studied this full on for a couple of years to get a handle on it.
You believe me, you did my heading.
So did someone introduce you to this? Or?
Yeah, Tristan actually introduced me to this, and he sent me, interestingly enough, this document. I forget what the name of it was, but it was by Mary Elizabeth Croft, and it was on this whole proof of claim thing, and how I think it was called Cracking the Code, or How I Clobbered the Banks, one of those sorts of things. When I read that, it just blew my head off. I was just like, oh shit, I can't believe this stuff. It was like somebody had woken me up from this bad dream. It was exactly like the Matrix, And so when I studied that, I then just went off on an incredible journey of having to know and research everything. So I just was downloading, and studying laws and corporations acts and all of this stuff. And I came kind of full circle. And then earlier this year, she actually bought my CD, bought my DVD. I had a letter from her. And so I emailed her and was asking her some questions. And she mentioned something about a case, a court case that she was involved with. And I offered to help out. And so it turned out the lady who I had initially learnt from ended up asking me for advice. And so I ended up giving her some stuff that she didn't know about to help her out with her court case, which was about proof of claim and things that she didn't know about. So that was really cool, because she'd been doing it for 30 years. Now,
because there was something on A Current Affair, I can't remember, it sounds very, very similar, but they basically had a house and paid council rates.
Oh yeah, I can tell you all about that one.
Yeah, and did they create their own royal family or something with a king and a queen? Or
yeah, that was just kind of a bit of a joke, because you can do that. Basically, that's
incidentally, I think that's why the media gave it coverage, because it was, trivialised the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah.
Made it like a little
Make it a joke.
novelty.
Yeah.
And people just go, oh yeah, sure you can do that.
They have a bit of a laugh and a bit of a chuckle, Oh, look at it. Okay, essentially what you can do, land is ours, okay? Nobody really owns it as per se, right? The government kind of holds it for us, okay, until we reclaim it, which sounds strange. So what you can do is you can actually do a quick claim on the land and go back and check all of the titles to the land, and you can actually get the original title and make sure that you own everything and there's no encumbrances, and then you declare yourself a state. Okay, so you declare yourself to be your own state. It might be the state, you can make up whatever name you want to, right? And that's what these guys have done. They declared themselves a state. because the government was denying them access to their land. And if you notice, everybody has a medium strip on their land, right? Even here, okay, certain people have been fined for parking their car with the arse end hanging over in their own driveway, mind you, but the arse end of it is on this supposed, invisible medium strip that the council owns, okay? And you're blocking this kind of fictitious, invisible piece of land. And I'm sure that the governments make a median strip so that they control access to your land, right? And so anyway, that's what that was all about. So these guys, and just to kind of formalise it, they decided to become king and queen of their own state. And so everyone can do
Wouldn't
that.
that exclude you from taxation also?
You can make up your own rules. You can do whatever you like because you become what we all are, sovereign. We're all sovereign.
At the same time, if you did that, wouldn't they be able to say, well, we're not going to supply things like power and water?
Sure. And so what he had done is he'd actually gone and made agreements, which you can do as well. You go and make an agreement with a utility supplier or with a phone company, and you have an agreement with them to supply something. Yeah, but I don't think they weren't paying council rates.
Yep. Exactly, yeah.
It's all about agreements. Now we're going to pop back to these credit card ones. Let me just open this up here. It doesn't matter if we drop off on the recording.
What do you think would happen if this got out in the public and everybody started doing it? Would they be able to change the law?
You can't change laws, okay, because we don't own the laws.
Would they
What I would be afraid of happening is of opening a Pandora's box and having subversive groups, or perhaps even Vikings, or misusing the system. Because the key point in all of this stuff is that we all have to take back our sovereignty. We have to take back our responsibility for our actions, and we basically do. I mean, when I journey on the roads, on the common ways of the land, I still abide by the general speed limit, even though I'm not subject to it. I still accept, and there's a certain level of responsibility that everyone else is doing this. I stop at the red lights. I do all those things because it's the naturally accepted kind of passage.
So the fact that people out there have bothered to say do experiments or tests into and research what is a safe way to conduct yourself.
Sure.
And so you're taking that as
I accept. I agree. Basically, to go along with that, even though I'm not subject to it. For example, if they said I was speeding, okay, it wouldn't apply to me. So I generally accept, the status quo, and by doing that, I take responsibility for my own actions.
Like you were saying before, the problem in this being is that people who aren't generally we'll say law-abiding, but people who go out and deliberately do the wrong thing by other people would be able to then use this to manipulate the system to get off.
Sure, if they studied it and knew how to do it,
your average person who treats other people well and isn't a bad person.
So could you go to the extreme, go out and murder someone, get arrested and use these techniques to stay out of jail?
Oh, I won't answer it. I won't answer those questions. However,
wait a minute.
anyone can.
In theory.
In theory.
Sorry, you can't just go through all of this.
Yeah.
And
but for those people who might be listening,
out of answering a question like that.
But I don't want to prompt anyone to do anything. You can see what I'm coming from.
No, but you've got to be clear about where you're coming from. You can't sort of outline
in theory,
like this, and then when you're challenged at a point that's really a bit too hard, sort of duck out of it and say no.
Okay, well, in theory, yeah, sure.
Thank you.
You could any one of us could take a gun and go and shoot someone, right? but it's not morally right to do so.
Back in the instance where you're in court and the judge wasn't asking you those questions, you're responding in a way where that you're putting the question back on him.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in the end of that court session?
Dismissed.
He just says, court dismissed, thrown out the case.
Yeah, because he's not able to gain jurisdiction over you. Yeah, so
But you could just do a little slip up with one word and then he's got you.
yeah, you'd have to really work to get back out of it again. You know, if once he's got you, it would be difficult, but you could do it. But the best way is to stay out of it, and the best way is not to go to court, obviously, with good paperwork. So I'm going to just try and open up here.
I guess the if people had intent to follow that path and initiate all the processes, primarily for let's call it antisocial behaviour, I think they'd probably find it a lot easier to do what criminals, corporate criminals street criminals do all the time, and just do it anyway, and just use the...
And just get a really good lawyer to get you off anyway.
Yeah, whatever. So that's probably, for them easier, just, pay some money to get the right actor to...
Yeah. Okay. I've located the files now. I'm just going to open these up and read you something here. Now, this is getting back to the issue of credit card fraud and credit card debt. Now, there's no such thing as debt. I just want to make that very clear. There is no such thing as debt. This is a notice that I put together for a friend of mine who was in, as I said, $47,000 of debt, and he received back a notice to say that the balance was zero after I'd finished this. Now, this is a conditional acceptance and debt verification notice.
So he didn't have to get rid of his entity or anything.
No.
He just had to use these letters.
I basically acted as his agent.
Yeah.
And I think we did about 3 or 4 letters. Yeah. So, what I basically wrote for him was this. I refer to the default notice dated 11th of March 2006 and wish to advise that your negotiable instrument has been accepted for value upon proof of claim, which may be substantiated by forwarding the following verification of debt details within 3 days, 72 hours, of receipt of this notice to the address listed below. Number 1. Proof of the existence of an account or contract in the actual flesh and blood name of John Doe, duly signed and witnessed by both parties, not a unilateral agreement, and upon which signed page there is reference to the entire agreement. Note, John Doe is an artificial entity, a limited liability legal fiction trademark, which constitutes valuable intellectual property, and all rights, title, and interest are reserved. Number 2. Proof of claim that you are the current holder of the original above-mentioned debt instrument and that it has not been on-sold to another party. Remember I talked before about the debt being on-sold. They no longer have the right to claim. Number 3. A copy of the actual accounting whereby Bank SA has incurred a loss of the alleged debt. And number 4. An invoice, not a statement, for any amount of money allegedly owing or owed to Bank SA by John Doe. Now at the bottom of there I've got a disclaimer. So here are the things. Now I know that they can't provide any of those, and these things vary. Sometimes I like to put on there as a number 5, proof of claim that there is any lawful money in circulation backed by anything of value, because that really fucks them up, right? Can I say that on the air? Fuck up. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
There's a disclaimer. Sorry?
I was just gonna say. So you could go out tomorrow into a bank, get a $500,000 loan, go buy a house, and then send a load of these letters and be rid of the debt, but still have the house.
We come back to force here, because what they would attempt to do is to extort the physical property away from you, because there is a certain maxim of law of ownership. You know, finders keepers kind of thing. So what they kind of do in those things is they try to hire people to take away the property away from you. It's all about ownership, physical ownership of something, right? Plus, I would say that they also own the deed that you don't actually have the deed yet.
Right.
Okay, so it's a difficult situation in no sense. It would be different if you had a credit card and you'd gone out and bought something and they couldn't actually physically locate the item to try and repossess it, during this period of redemption. Yeah.
But you were saying his was a home loan. Could they not try and take the house?
Sorry, I think his was actually a personal loan. No, he was actually wanting to get a home loan. So he was wanting to make sure that his credit card, I guess his debt history was clean. And I'll come to that in a minute, which is the cleaning part. Because obviously once you've actually gone through all this process and no one's been able to provide you with proof of claim that there is a debt, what they do is they discount it all, they sell it, and they report you as a bad payment. Right? But nothing actually happens to you. And so
you do end up with a bad credit rating.
What you end up with is a note at one of the credit reporting agencies that says this is a default payment. Okay? Because their books didn't balance. So what you do is you write another letter. This is the final stage in the cleaning side of this. You write a letter to the credit reporting agency and ask for your credit history. And then you challenge them. Okay, because they have no idea, right? They're not even the third party, they're like the fourth, fifth or sixth party here, so they have no idea of what's right or wrong. So you actually challenge them to provide proof of claim. And if they can't do that, they have to basically correct the incorrect record. And that's how you clean it up afterwards. Okay.
And if they choose not to for some reason, they just say no.
They can't. I mean, even
can you challenge them and say, I want to challenge you in the courts and use the same process against them in the court?
You don't even need to go to court, actually. There are places that you can just sort of go and say, well, this person is reporting. They're not allowed to incorrectly report things like that. Even a debt collector, if you ask them to stop bothering you, and they don't, every time that they bother you and don't provide proof of claim, it's instantly $1,000 fine. Okay, and most people don't know that either. So, it's very interesting. The disclaimer that I put on the bottom of this says, please note, incorrectly addressed mail shall be returned unopened and unread. Any and all correspondence from this point must be by mail only. John Doe does not authorize the recording of his voice at any time for any purpose, nor does he consent to being contacted by telephone, and shall enforce his copyright rights in all instances such as copyright infringement or trademark violation. No authorization for the use of John Doe TM, all caps, is implied, granted or permitted. John Doe, all caps TM, agrees to hold harmless John Doe, the natural flesh and blood man, for all claims and liability under private contract between the parties. So there you have the complete. They cannot enter into that at all. And basically what you have here in these situations is a failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. Okay. So we've done a number of those now, and it's been successful in every time, and not once have any of the credit card companies or the legal agents or the debt collectors been able to provide one instance or one iota of any evidence that there is any debt. So we didn't actually do anything wrong. We only asked some questions. We said, again, here's the conditional thing. They've sent you a statement. They can't send you an invoice because there's no money, right? If you ask them for an invoice, they can't do it. So they send you a statement. And you say, okay, well, I'm happy to pay the alleged debt upon proof of claim that there is one. Right? You try and get these guys to provide proof that there is any debt. Forget it. It never happens.
And have you got any idea how many people are actually doing this, or
I think there's quite a few people in America now doing this. Quite a number of people. And in America, they've got this thing called the UCC. For all those people who are listening in America, which is the Uniform Commercial Code. And you can actually register your Strawman using the Universal Commercial Code I think it's the UCC1, and you fill out the forms and you register. Basically, everything that you own comes under this filing, this UCC1 filing. It's an agreement which basically states that you are the owner of the right, title and interest of everything that you have, including your strawman. Okay, so they have that system, and a lot of people who are onto this redemption thing are doing it. They're doing it that way. In Australia, we don't have UCC. I don't know what we have here. I've been trying to find out, but I don't think we even really need to do that.
So have you come across other people that have done it?
Not many. I've heard of one or two in Australia, but it's pretty new here. So it is quite cutting edge.
And why do you think it's quite new? I mean, obviously, people could have been doing this for 100 years.
Yeah,
How come it's just coming out
Sure. It's information
I suppose
control.
the internet and
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're fortunate that some people can get information out, and it slowly gets around, but it's certainly not mainstream. And if it does become even remotely mainstream, it becomes a joke. It's made to look ridiculous. I did hear of one case where some people had put up a sign outside of the house and they weren't paying rates because they were going through the same process. And I think it was in Toowoomba. Yeah, it was on the Foreign Affair or something.
And do you think it's a good thing to get this information out? A good thing, the more people do it, the better? Or is it?
I do now.
More people are aware of it.
Yeah, I do now at this particular time because of what's going on with America and the whole. We come into the Bilderberg, the Trilateral Commission, all of the New World Order. We basically whatever people kind of say New World Order and they go, oh, and it's all like George Orwell, right? But there is a New World Order.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's formed by all of these corporations and entities and basically all of the people who run the world. All this stuff filters down through the media. There's only 6 people who run all of the media in the whole world. There's only 6 people. And I've got a map of that somewhere on this computer, amongst all the other stuff. But it lists all of the control of the radio stations and the...
It's very evident, very obvious at the time.
Yeah, the newspapers and the print, and the media. So there's only 6 people that actually run that.
Filtered through those 6 people.
And we probably won't go into the D.L. Abraham stuff or the real New World Order stuff tonight, but that's another really big deep hole that we've been researching into. That's a very, very so at this point in time I can see that the New World Order's plan is generally population reduction by 80%. That's generally been the consensus of what they want to do. They want to reduce the whole population by 80% by whatever means. Okay, but when they come around to your house and knock on the door, they're going to be taking the straw man away for sure because they can. They can declare a state of emergency, as they do in America. Over there, they have this scary thing called FEMA. FEMA will come knocking at your door and they'll take you away and put you on a truck and they'll lock you up in a FEMA facility, right? Because they can. Yeah. That's force. That's not law. That's force. Yeah. You're talking about private corporations assuming control over natural flesh and blood beings who have been misled into becoming entities and corporate souls unwittingly.
Without even realising it,
What do you think? What do you think was the sort of the major sort of? First of all, these common laws. I mean, when we saw the movie V.
V for Vendetta is an interesting one.
And the Old Bailey.
Yeah.
What's it? Are those laws actually held in a repository there? Is that the...
No, the Old Bailey in England, I think it's in London, was the place in the old days, in old England, where common law courts were held. Okay, and the Old Bailey is the standing remnant of old law, of the law of the land. And so the Old Bailey has become a symbol in England of where law came from, which I think also came from Rome, right? Because England was kind of founded by Rome. So in V for Vendetta. Now, when I first saw V, I was like, yeah, this is great. Burn down the governments, right? But when I did my research, I actually found out that V was supporting Guy Fawkes. Now, in England, they have Guy Fawkes every year, and they burn Guy Fawkes. And why do they burn him? Because he was a Roman. He was actually like a Roman traitor. Not a Roman traitor, but he was a traitor of England. Okay, he was a traitor of the protesters, the Protestants. Protestant means to protest. Okay, so when you've got the Protestants and the Catholics fighting each other, what you've got is the Roman Catholic Church trying to take over England. Okay, and you've got the Protestants who are protesting against it. Now, in V, he's supporting Guy Fawkes. Now, Guy Fawkes was a Roman Catholic infiltrator into... he was going to blow up Parliament to unseat the Protestants and to reinstall Roman Catholic law. Okay, so what V is actually about is actually a disguise of bringing in this corporate control under the disguise of being against governments. But in fact, in the beginning of the film, he blows up the Old Bailey. Okay, and if you look at the words on the side of it, I can't recall them exactly, but it says something like, upholding peace or common law on the side of the Old Bailey. He blows that up. On the top, it's got the lady with the scales of justice, and he blows that up because he blows up, as he says, he's blowing up the symbol of what it stands for, and what that stands for is common law and the reintroduction of this matrix, And of course, the V was written by the Wachowski brothers, who wrote the Matrix. I mean, these guys, have this symbology right through all of their films. Yeah.
So these common laws, they obviously must still be in there, like the oldest law books.
Yeah.
They're just written in ye olde English or whatever.
Yeah. I'm sure there must be a way to get hold of the original tablets they were written on. But yeah, the common law, the law of the land, would have been very different. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to compare that to what we have now. I mean, when people don't realise how America got to be where it is and what it was doing and what this is all really about. But when America, those 13 states that split off from England, right, and wanted to be their own country, okay, with their own, and manufacture their own money, that's what England was fighting them over, really, was that they wanted to create their own money, which wasn't backed by gold. And the people in England at the time said, if you allow a country to do that, they'll take over the world, right? Because
they're just going to have...
So they can just print their own money, right? It's all printed by the Federal Reserve.
They know that England wasn't going to get any tax money from the Americas.
Yeah. So it's all
that's
like
what they were going to miss out on. That's what they were defending.
Sure.
From England's point of view.
Yeah. And so you have the War of Independence. Okay. Was it 1812, 17? When was the War of Independence? 1776. That's the date that's imprinted on the Statue of Liberty's tablet that she's holding. Okay. The Statue of Liberty, by the way, is actually the Masonic goddess Semiramis, and she's the goddess of war. So the Statue of Liberty has nothing to do with liberty. Okay. She's the goddess of war.
So they went from producing money with paper to money on computers, which is even more.
Yeah, well, even the money on paper wasn't backed by gold. So England was against that. France joined with America, obviously, against England. So you've got England fighting America, basically over this money creation thing. And it all goes back to Babylonian times, really. It goes back to the time of all the way back to the Jews and Babylon, and the Temple of Solomon. This stuff goes all the way back, because Semiramis was a Babylonian, Amazonian, believe it or not, an Amazon queen. Okay, the triple goddess, the tri-star. She's Columbia. She's, when you see Columbia pictures, she's on there holding a torch. Columbia TriStar. She's the triple goddess. She's the Masonic Babylonian queen at the time of Nebuchadnezzar. And what was the ship that they had in the Matrix? The Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, where were they going? They're going to Zion.
Who did Saddam Hussein think was a reincarnation of?
You've got to trace all this stuff back to.
This is all rather mythical and iconic.
It is. Yeah.
But this artificial system that you're outlining and that we're dealing with, if it doesn't exist, whether it's the Matrix or not, humans and society have to interact on some level. What would you suggest to replace it with? What system of organisation and interaction between entities, be it real entities or virtual ones, that should supplant this system? If it's so bad that it needs to be replaced with something, what is the replacement? What would be a replacement?
You know why I see all of this stuff happening is because the reason that entities are created, mostly, is to gain an advantage in business. So IP, intellectual property, McDonald's, Coke, branding, all of that IP stuff, right, is the creation of artificial entities to create an unfair advantage in the monetary corporate world. And so what this system does is it's the regulation of artificial entities. And so that world is real. It is real in the sense that it has a life of its own. But for us to interact with it means that we have to have some kind of transmitting utility. But to replace it, in the old days there was trade, and a lot of people have tried to bring in trade, like barter card and all those sorts of things. They try to bring in a system where there's a fair exchange. I'll give you my sheep for a bushel of wheat, or that they used to have systems of fair exchange. And the only time that taxes and things came in is when you had a liege lord, who owned the land, and he would get you to do labour in his land, and you would pay taxes for the upkeep of things, and it was apportioned. But tax is no longer apportioned; it's become this artificial thing. So if we were to replace it, we'd have to go back.
Does it need to be replaced as well? Is another question. Like in my particular case, my whole world and my identity is in my hand right now. I'm not actually disappointed or disapproving of that. I haven't actually. Today was the first day I actually went to a bank and got cash dollars.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say this year, but certainly very, very many months.
Yeah.
I run my life through my credit card, my financial life.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly happy with that because I don't have to deal with the cash stuff or whatever.
Sure.
And
most
the
people
fact
are.
that if I do it this way, the one benefit of it is that every transaction I make is automatically recorded.
Yeah.
I don't have to account for anything personally. I don't have to use cash. I don't have to deal with the fact that I do or do not have actually cash on me or whatever, as long as my bank account's got a certain overhead in it. And mainly, all of those transactions are recorded. So when it comes time to actually deal with tax and stuff like that, the paper trail's already there.
Yeah.
I don't have a great sweat about anything. I don't have a great problem with anything. I can appreciate everything that you're saying.
Yeah.
But personally, I actually don't really have a great problem with the current system.
To the system,
And
it's very easy.
If anything, I would somewhat object to actually spending the extra amount of overhead that I would have to invest in to fight against it, as you would be. I don't want to spend 3 months actually changing my identities, because the ones that I've got, I'm actually perfectly happy with.
Sure. Well, it does cause.
So in other words, that's what I'm saying. What
if you look at it
would
on
be
a
a reasonable thing to replace the
you don't.
current
You can keep
situation?
your perfect system that you're using, and that works for you.
Yeah.
You look on a bigger level with multi-corporations that are lending out your money at 90%, and the corporations are getting bigger and stronger, more control, and we're staying stuck and happy where we are using our credit cards. We're stuck in a position down here and this system could be replaced and be more fair, with them not be out, the laws sort of benefit them and they're getting richer and bigger and the kind of thing.
And taxing your money, like the government actually taking tax away from you and saying that it's using, this is the funny thing, and people kind of get up on their high horses sometimes and say, well, the government uses my tax and, it builds roads and all that sort of stuff. That's bullshit. We build the roads. The people build the roads, right? They don't use the tax money. Or the only thing that our tax does is it goes toward paying off the debt to the International Monetary Fund, okay? And everything else is created by the governments as fictitious cash, right? But when you hear people say, well, my tax money is paying for you dole bludgers, that's not true. It's not at all. That's far from the truth. So, but the government is taking your hard labour, paying you pittance for it. Whatever job that we're all doing. I mean, if you're working for $50 an hour, I mean, if you think about it, that $50 or those 50 credits that you get, if you got $50 an hour, and not many people get $50 an hour, okay? You think about that, an hour of your time on this planet, of your life, blood and sweat, and then the government comes along and takes out 30% or whatever it takes out of that, right? And you get given nothing. You don't get paid in anything, right? So you get nothing of value for it. And even if you bought something of value for it, what would you buy it with? You'd buy it with the private credit of the International Monetary Fund. You'd be buying it with these pieces of paper.
Not with your hard-earned cash. Yeah.
Not with yours, because there is no money. All those dollars that you think are yours that might be sitting in your wallets don't belong to you. They're on loan from the International Monetary Fund, and you pay tax because you're using them, right? And at the end of the day, if they said they're not worth anything, you can forget it. Now, I spoke to the bank manager of St George Bank a couple months back.
And that is a system that should be changed.
Yeah. And I said to him, is there any lawful money in circulation backed by anything of value? And he said, well, of course there is. No. And I said, well, what do you own of value? And so, he said, well, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, but none of those things have any intrinsic value. They don't retain their value. I said, what do you have that retains its value? He said, well, I've got a gold ring on. Right? And I said, okay, what did you use to buy the gold ring with? And he was silent, because he suddenly realised that everything that we own is bought with the private credit of the International Monetary Fund, right?
And that gold ring is absolutely useless once he gets hungry.
Yeah. Now, when you buy gold, if you go along to like a place that sells gold and silver, and you want to buy some gold or sell some gold, they're going to ask you for one of these, right? Now you go along and try and give them one of these and see what happens. Now I'm going to show you this. This is my sovereign identification. Pass that one around. That is the most valuable thing that I have. It's my sovereign identification. I created it myself. It's my photo. It's my real name. It's my real signature, and my real date of birth. Which, by the way, everyone's date of birth is hearsay, because, I mean, were you there at the time? You might have been, but, I mean, do you know? Can you actually, anyone here prove that they were born on the day that you were told you were born? Right, so it's hearsay. Now, when you go along and buy some gold, they're going to ask you for some ID. I dropped that one on the table and said, here you go. They wouldn't accept it. No, sorry. I said, why not? They said, we need a government ID. I said, why is that? And she said, well, we need proof of who you are. And I said, well, I'm giving you proof of who I am. This is who I am. I'm saying who I am, because I tell the government who I am, and then they issue these second-hand documents, okay, which say who they think I am based on who I've told them that I am. So here's my birth certificate, and here's who I am, and they won't accept it. They have to have your all capital letter legal fiction, because they have to do business with the Strawman. They can't do business with a natural flesh and blood being. Okay, and so that transaction is recorded. And if you buy gold, what do you buy it with? You buy it with the private credit of the International Monetary Fund, which isn't yours. And so they can just go and take back all this stuff if they want to.
Mm.